Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Killer Creation. In this series, I create a killer and a survivor for the asymmetrical horror game, Dead by Daylight. And here, as promised, is the second of the bonus killer creations to help make up for the 2 weeks I had to miss because of my laptop issues. But hey, we won't let a simple setback like that stop us from keeping up with our schedule. Let me first thank you all for your support and feedback on the Dead by Daylight and Furry Aminos, as well as the Dead by Daylight official forums and Twitter. It's all been really helpful making everything fun and balanced. I'd like to thank you all for your comments that you give in the videos. They really do help to encourage my efforts. I hope you all enjoy this video enough to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell to be among the first to see the newest content. Now that we've got all of my thanks and appreciation voiced, let's hop right into this week's killer creation and take a look at our newest killer, the Blaze. Adama Legrand grew up in Paris, learning the winding streets and twisting alleyways that was the city of love as a child. His family was poor and he had little to do beyond exploring the city and getting mixed up with the wrong crowd. The kids in the neighborhood were thieves at first, but as they grew they began to rob people for money, attacked strangers for sport, and shook down stores for protection payoffs. Adama quickly became among the most ruthless of the group. Adama's cruelty and severity eventually started to push away the others. He was finally ostracized from the gang after a store refused to pay their protection money, and instead of destroying the inside of the store or roughing up the owner, Adama beat the man and his family into unconsciousness, chained the doors closed, then burned the store to the ground. While the members of his gang fled from the scene, Adama stayed to watch the place burn, a newfound passion rising inside him. The heat of the flames and their dancing lights stirred a subtle madness inside of him, and he understood what he needed to do. Adama abandoned his gang as quickly as they abandoned him. He immediately began training and taking classes to join the local fire department. He excelled at the physical and textbook aspects of the courses and was quickly hired on after he graduated. He made a name for himself quickly, fearlessly charging into fires and rescuing citizens, all for the secret pleasure of being among the flames. But the work wasn't enough. The emergencies too few. Soon, a slew of fires began to crop up in Adama's old neighborhood, each of them more severe than the next, and each of them ended up having at least one person who perished in the flames. The deaths all seemed to belong to members of a local street gang, though it was noted that Adama did try to save them. This malicious nature and willingness to destroy and kill simply to feed his dark pleasures caught the attention of the entity. There was no trickery or manipulation needed for Adama. The entity whispered its offer, and Adama willingly agreed and stepped into the killing grounds. Now that we have the Blaze's backstory out of the way, let's take a quick look at his stats, then jump into his perks and powers. The Blaze has a 4.2 meters per second base speed, a 32 meter terror radius, and is a very tall killer. His slower speed, larger terror radius, and larger size gives survivors plenty of warning of his arrival. But the Blaze compensates for this by making the terrain and very air around him dangerous for the survivors to interact with. By using his power, all shall burn. After channeling the ability button for 2 seconds, the Blaze is slowed by 50% and releases a 15 meter plume of flame straight ahead of you for 4 seconds. The Blaze remains slowed by 50% while the flame is being fired. Anything caught in the flames for 2 seconds catches fire and remains on fire for 60 seconds. Pallets that catch fire break when dropped, or when a survivor vaults them. If a pallet is already dropped when it is burned and a survivor vaults it, it breaks and the survivor is stunned for 1.5 seconds. If a healthy survivor interacts with or touches a surface that is actively on fire, they will be injured. If an injured survivor interacts with a surface that is actively on fire, they suffer from the broken status for 30 seconds. The Blaze's second power is called Choking Smoke. The Blaze emits a thick smoke around him. As he moves, he leaves a trail of smoke behind him that spreads out over 5 meters and lasts for 15 seconds. Survivors that pass through the smoke have their vision blurred and cough loudly for 10 seconds. If a survivor remains in the smoke for 20 seconds, they fall into the dying state. As you can see, the Blaze is all about zone control and keeping the survivors on the move. His flames, while slowing him significantly when he activates them, keeps areas of the map dangerous for a good amount of time, and can absolutely ruin the reliability of pallets. The threat of interacting with burning objects forces survivors to take wider paths than they usually would, forcing less than optimal movement. Choking Smoke gives the Blaze a way to hinder the stealth ability of survivors and force them to take alternate routes if they don't wish to give themselves away. And because survivors are extremely punished for trying to interact with the smoke and fire too much, this keeps them on their toes and moving to avoid the constant threat of becoming broken or put into the dying state. Now that we've gone over the Blaze's powers, let's take a look at his perks and see how he changes up the game for killers. The Blaze's first perk is called Overheat. Heat can affect things directly or indirectly. You know how to make the air itself heavy with it to affect others. Overheat a generator whenever you perform a damage generator action. Damage generator actions you perform take twice as long. Survivors who interact with a generator that has been overheated suffer from exhaustion while working on the generator, and for 10, 15, or 20 seconds after they stop work on the generator. The Blaze's second perk is called Splintered Wood. You know how to make things that should mean safety for others, put them in danger instead. Whenever a survivor interacts with a pallet, they suffer from the hemorrhage effect for 5, 10, or 15 seconds. If a survivor suffering from hemorrhage interacts with 3 pallets, they suffer from deep wounds. The Blaze's third perk is called Swirling Fog. The entity has seen how well you work with the fog and has seen fit to increase its presence and your awareness in it. The fog is slightly thickened on the map. Survivors who move through fog clouds have their auras revealed for 0.5, 1, or 2 seconds. And that will do it for the Blaze's perks. Overheat applies pressure on the survivors while they work on their objective by removing the ability to utilize some of their most potent perks. Splintered Wood makes pallets a double-edged sword, and a punishing tool if they try to drop too many too quickly. It makes them think about how safe a pallet is when they have to consider whether or not it will give them deep wounds or not. And Swirling Fog makes for a way to track survivors and make things more difficult to see at the same time. Combining it with add-ons that darken the mist can actually enhance its tracking ability. Now that we've gone over the Blaze's perks, let's take a look at our newest survivor, Jessica May. Jessica May was a part of an organization that specialized in disaster relief response. The organization had an excellent reputation bringing food, water, medical supplies, rescue workers, and medical personnel. Jessica specialized in finding survivors and bringing them in safely to receive medical attention. She regularly went in with the first wave of rescue personnel, focusing on collapsed buildings where there were likely to be people trapped. She regularly worked out and kept in shape so that she could maneuver through unstable debris and work her way through rubble. Jessica was dedicated to the work and even made sure to follow up with the people she rescued later by bringing them supplies that they needed later on. Her greatest challenge came when a Class 5 hurricane managed to make its way up America's east coast and destroy multiple cities, towns, and roadways for hundreds of miles. Her organization sent Jessica to Miami, where the damage was worse. She went directly to work, diving into crumbling and unstable buildings to hunt for people in distress. She moved through dozens of apartment complexes and homes before coming to a commercial building whose 3 highest floors had caved in. With the main entrances locked, she climbed in through one of the windows and began to worm her way through the debris. After a few minutes, she began to hear cries coming from below her. She immediately started to crawl down, pulling the rubble out of the way and trying her best to make a safe path to bring the trapped people out. Each time she got where the voice was supposed to be, it came from further below. She continued working her way down, growing more and more concerned that the person was in a pocket that was throwing her voice. After a few hours of digging, Jessica had to take a break and leaned against what she thought was a stable wall. The wall crumbled beneath her and the floor quickly followed. She fell into the black basement of the building and passed out. When she woke up, the only light she could find was one that looked like a campfire. Now that we know how Jessica came to find her way into the entity's realm, let's check out her perks and see what she can teach the other survivors. Jessica's first perk is called Quick Slide. Your time in disaster zones has taught you that sometimes the fastest way to get somewhere in a hurry isn't to go over debris, but under it. For every 2 pallets you drop, you gain a token. Whenever you approach a dropped pallet, you may use the secondary action button to use up a token and slide under the pallet instead of vaulting it. Jessica's second perk is called Drop Down. Moving over broken terrain is a cautious task, especially when moving vertically. Taking a bit of time can help save you some hurt and still get you where you're going faster. Whenever you approach a multi-level drop, you can use the Activate Ability button to drop to the side of the drop and hang from it, then drop down. Dropping down this way takes 3 seconds, but you make no noise while dropping down in this way. Jessica's third perk is called Fireman Carry. Emergency training has taught you how to get people out of danger zones by carrying them more efficiently. You can use the secondary action ability button on a survivor in the dying state in order to pick them up and carry them. Your speed is reduced by 40% and the survivor's recovery speed is reduced by 20% while the survivor is being carried. And that'll do it for Jessica's perks. Quick Slide gives you a way to run the killer and preserve pallets by maneuvering through them in a way that keeps you safe where you might not normally be. Drop Down isn't exactly a huge perk with amazing abilities, but it can keep you hidden from the killer by making drop down slower, but silent so the killer doesn't hear you fall. Fireman Carry gives you the option to pull a dying survivor to safety faster than they could crawl away while still allowing them to recover, albeit at a slower pace. This is one that altruistic survivors will really find helpful in this new slug for the 4K meta. But that will do it for today's killer creation video. I hope you all found the Blaze to be an interesting zoning killer like I do. and I hope you find that Jessica would be a pretty amazing addition to your survivor roster. Thank you all for sticking through the video. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like. If you didn't, give it a dislike and let me know why in the comments. I hope you all have a great day, and as always, stay positive.